Hello, English 102A Summer Session 1. I am your professor, Dr. Patrick Whitfill. Typically, this is the time when I tell you what name you can call me by. And at this point, you know, whatever pretty much works. Patrick is fine, Dr. Whitfill is fine, Professor Whitfill. It doesn't really matter to me that much, but we will talk about sort of like etiquette at some point, and I'll explain why I think that's important shortly, and what I hope you do with that. So this is English 102. Again, the A section of that one. I'm actually going to start just briefly right now a timer. I'm going to try to keep the videos mainly to a 10 to 15 minute long time, which means some days there will be more than one video to watch. I don't know how many, there may be some days up to 3 or 4, but the idea is that you can hopefully choose which ones you look at and when, so that you're not feeling completely bombarded with hour-and-a-half long videos, which I don't think would serve really anybody any good. Though the summer courses are designed to traditionally go from an hour and 45 minutes. So in the end, the goal will be that I will provide enough content video and enough assignments that it will actually take up at least that much time in a given day, sometimes more, sometimes less, like any class. So we will be doing this by and large asynchronously, meaning that most of every class period that we have won't happen between the times where our classes are originally set to occur. So instead, you will have these videos available to you by the time a class would normally occur. So by 9 a.m., you'll be able to find the next day's video. And then we will have office hours that will occur 2 days a week, and a work day on Fridays where you can schedule meetings with me. And then in the last week of classes, in the fourth week, there are individual conferences or small group conferences, depending on what your projects look like, and we'll be able to meet then. So I am available to you with synchronous discussion, always available through email. I'll talk about sort of times where I stop answering email, but generally that will be the way of our communication. The reason, not that you necessarily need one, but just to clarify, the reason I'm doing asynchronous as opposed to synchronous is that for a number of reasons, both your availability, your ability to have access to your computer, lag time, my availability. We have a son who's about 20 months old, and he's a whole thing. And doesn't necessarily care that I have a full-time job, and so does his mother. So I can't necessarily be there for 9 to 10:45 or whatever time that is. So instead, what we're going to do is this. You're going to be watching videos, covering material, and then following up with me as need be. Most of our communication will happen via email and responses to the journal. So I'm going to talk about all that as well. So that's kind of the idea. We're going to talk a little bit about things like Zoom etiquette. What does that look like for us? What is the purpose of doing this Zoom, and what can we get away with? What can we not get away with? How do I want you to approach this? Some suggestions, and as we kind of figure this out together. I don't expect it to be seamless. I don't expect it to be perfect. I do expect us to meet deadlines on both of our ends. So I'm going to meet my deadlines. I'll expect you to meet your own. So there will be requirements that you have to do to receive full credit for this 102. 102 traditionally is a course where we're trying to get you to introduced to things such as literature, mainly, is what we're looking at. In most institutions, Wofford is one of the few who don't do this. I mean, I don't have the statistics on that one, but Wofford does not teach a traditional 102 course in English, which is traditionally an English composition and rhetoric course. Composition meaning the art of writing, and rhetoric is the art of argument, right? Developing an argument. In those normal classes or classes like that in other institutions, you might be looking at a number of different types of sources, looking at everything from television commercials to op-eds at the Washington Street Journal. Well, that's not a real I don't think it's a real newspaper, but whatever. And you'd be trying to break those down for things like ethos, pathos, and logos, and their kairos. And you'd look at what we call the Toulmin argument, which is a triangle. And then you'd be trying to reproduce those kinds of writings in your own, and there would be different kinds of elemental work with that one. Whereas Wofford, what we do is a little bit different. We still talk about, composition, which is again the art of writing, and rhetoric, which is the art of argument, but we use it all by looking at specific literary texts. And in this course, we'll be looking at poetry, American poetry and American identity, which is the subdivision of this course. We have 2 textbooks for this class. We have Ada Lamone's Bright Dead Things, which is a relatively new collection. I like to pick pretty new things if I can. This came out in 2015. Very successful book. She's had a very good career, very contemporary poet. The second book and the last book we'll be reading for this summer session is Claudia Rankine's Citizen. Some of you may have some familiarity with either of these texts. They're actually pretty well known in mainstream culture. though you may not know anything about them at all, and that's completely fine. For a number of you, you probably didn't know you were signing up for a 102 that has to deal specifically with poetry, and that may be something that causes you a little bit of alarm, but please don't be alarmed. Part of the point of a course like this is for me to help you to understand how to approach poetry. In fact, that's the major point of what I want to do, is to show you how to engage with it, how to enjoy it, how to find a place in your mental space where you don't hate it. I find that a lot of students come out of high school with a real disdain for poetry, just a general sense that they don't get it, they don't understand it, it's intentionally confusing and confounding. And we're going to talk about those kinds of ideas as we go forward throughout the rest of the summer session. We will be working on our writing skills. In fact, mainly you're going to write less this semester than you would in any normal semester, and that has to do not only with the time frame, right? We simply don't have as much time, so you can't produce as much material, but it's because also I want to move away from this idea of if you produce enough pages you somehow have accomplished a thing. I'm going to work towards the comments that I almost always give on about 95% of the essays that I grade, everything from 102 or Humanities 101 to like English 473 in this gambit of writing courses. My most common comments are, be specific, stay focused, and take your time. So I'm going to try to develop a course this semester with you where that's what we work on. So you're not going to write a lot. Some of your prompts will be 50 words, right? Sometimes 100 words. At the end of the semester, you're going to be turning in really tightly written, well understood, critical approaches to complicated ideas instead of these sort of surface level plot driven summary based essays, which I tend to get a lot of. So we're going to talk about what you owe to that. What is the point of that? How can you best approach that? And my goal, of course, is to teach all of those things to you. So I'm going to try to do that throughout the course of this particular semester. You will have a number of assignments that are due. You'll have a major paper that's due at the end of the second week and a final project that's due at the end of the fourth week. Your next video will go through those in much more detail. The nice thing about that is that those will always be available to you via Moodle, so you can go back and reference them at any point. And I will always ask you to please double check the videos and the syllabus and any material on Moodle before you email me. It's very easy for us to get into an email loop where we're constantly back and forth. So I'm going to ask that you take ownership of this particular course and you double check what you need to and make sure that you have that information ready to go before you contact me. There will be office hours given twice a week where there'll be basically open Zoom class sessions where I will record them and you can come and ask as many questions as you need to during those times, and then I will upload those to the rest of the course. There will be required elements where you have to use Zoom and do recordings of yourself and send them back to me, which gets us to very briefly in the last few minutes here, Zoom etiquette. And then the next thing we'll talk about in the next video, I'll be going over the syllabus and some of the course policies to make sure that you feel good about this. I prefer a class experience. I prefer a one-on-one, not a one-on-one, but like a room, a discussion-based room so we can talk a lot more. So I know this isn't ideal probably for a lot of you. So the first thing I want to tell you is please stay in contact with me. Let me know what I can do to be helpful. Let me know where you're struggling, especially if you're having issues with access to material or following up with information, or your Wi-Fi sucks, or you have work, or you're taking care of somebody. You don't have to give me the specifics. If you have specifics that kind of need to be known, but that are, let's call them hardships, please contact either Boyce Lawton, who's very helpful with these types of things, or the dean, right? Talk to Roberta Bigger or Dean Wallace, and let them know that this is where your struggle is. They'll contact me. It'll stay private, but they'll give me a sense of where you are. You're welcome to share that kind of information with me, of course, please do so, but you're in no way required to do so. So the idea here is, how do we best utilize our time, and what does it look like to utilize our time? The first thing I want to stress to you is that you have a lot of the responsibility here. I'm going to provide you with as much information as I can, but when it comes right down to it, you got to do the work. You've got to stay on top of it. You got to make sure that you follow up with me, because you're not showing up to a classroom. You're not having me in your face saying, like, do you have your material? That's not happening this semester. If you don't turn stuff in, you just don't turn stuff in and you get that 0. There's nobody who's going to go knock on your dorm room to make sure that you're doing the work. Not that we would do that in a normal semester, but the idea is that you're going to have to stay in contact with me. That's pretty much the first little bit that I want you to get across right now. I'm gonna check my time, make sure that I'm not going over this when I got about a minute left. Quickly, Zoom etiquette. So this happened from last semester, and I just briefly want to cover this one because we're not doing synchronous coursework. It's not that big of a deal for us, but we will have opportunities where we're going to be doing optional meetings together, and we'll have conferences with one-on-one. So what does Zoom etiquette look like? First, it means that you need to be in front of your camera, right? That you can't just put your screen up where it's just no face. That's not going to fly with me unless you have some pretty legitimate reason for that one. I want to see that you're present. When you're present, please stay fully clothed. Last semester, there were some professors talking about some students were showing up shirtless. Don't, right? That's the deal, right? I won't do it. You don't do it. Nobody does it. So make sure that that's cool. Make sure your background isn't like weirdly offensive or just offensive. It doesn't have to be weird. Just don't make offense occur back here. I have like a thing that I don't know what that is back there, and a smoke detector. That's totally fine. If you say that you're going to be at a meeting at a certain time, be there. Make sure that you're prepared. You will always receive a link to the Zoom meetings the morning before we have them, so you can follow directly up with that one, and you can meet with me. If you need more Zoom meetings, more one-on-one, that's fine. We can meet in certain times of the day. This video will end briefly, but the last thing I want to say about Zoom meetings very quickly is that my time works such that I can meet with you before 7 a.m. That's a big win for you. We can do that. I have some time between 1 and 3. That's my son's nap time, typically, depending on whether or not he's super into it. And then post like 7:30 p.m., I can meet, right? That's putting a lot of myself out there, but I'm happy to do that one. So if you're going to schedule something with me, make that meeting. All right, that gives me a lot of sense of where your connection is with this material. So that's going to be the end of this first video. If you have any questions about this is kind of introductory material. Follow up with an email. Otherwise, I'll assume that you're okay with this, and I'll start the next video and have that posted shortly thereafter. I wish I could say it was nice to meet you, and hope I get to. All right, have a lovely day.